Bulgaria, which had an unstable and uncertain stance on the Russia-Ukraine war, has finally come to its senses. Sofia is now in the camp of Russia, and the disastrous repercussions of supporting sanctions on Russia are catching up with it. Therefore, in order to save itself from further political catastrophe and economic distress, Bulgaria is adopting a diplomatic strategy and foreign policy which is pro-Russian. Hello and welcome to TFIGlobal, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Vedika. Let's begin. At an EU summit on 9th February, Bulgarian President Rumen Radev made statements that went against those of most of his peers. He called for peace in Ukraine at a time when President Volodymyr Zelensky was scheduled to visit Brussels to request more weapons to liberate the regions occupied by Russia. Although the previous Bulgarian parliament was able to approve the transfer of weaponry to Ukraine last November, Radev, who represents Bulgaria at EU summits, while the nation is without a normal government, has rejected the move. According to him, supplying Ukraine with arms is like putting out fire with gasoline. Radev further noted that he will request the EU to use all of its tools and ability to shift the discourse away from a military assault and focus on diplomatic solutions to the Russia-Ukraine war. When he was asked about a potential new round of sanctions that could target the Russian civil nuclear sector by the EU, Radev responded by stating, "Bulgaria cannot consent to penalties against the nuclear energy industry because they would have an immediate negative effect on our nuclear power. This is unacceptable. We are taking into account every scenario where additional sanctions would be appropriate, but we pay serious attention to the topics where our interests are at stake, such as nuclear energy." When asked if Bulgaria would object to nuclear energy sanctions, he responded, "Yes, we will use our veto if necessary." When Radev was asked if the EU will ask its members to deploy more weaponry to Ukraine, he responded by noting that Bulgaria had already made this decision, pointing to the vote in the parliament in November. "This is a brutal war, and we hear calls for peace less and less frequently. Nobody can define what success means. Therefore, all we hear are the voices of weapons and cries for victory," Radev continued. The president of Bulgaria has made it clear that the Balkan nation is not in favor of the West plot to violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Russia. Radev is one of the few leaders in the EU who realize that it is not Moscow which keeps fueling this bloody warfare. It is Washington and Brussels who persist in sinister endeavors have compelled Putin to use force. Similarly, by opposing the EU's decision of providing weaponry to Zelensky, Radev insinuated that the West's constant deliveries of arms to Ukraine are often perceived as a threat by Putin. This also brings into focus the universally accepted contention that had Zelensky not fallen into the well-woven diplomatic and political trap of the US and Europe, the conflict between Kyiv and Moscow would have been resolved without any bloodshed and devastation. Apart from his stance of not sending additional military assistance to Ukraine, another significant aspect of Radev's statement regarding the conflict in his condemnation of the EU's attempt to put sanctions on the nuclear energy sector of Russia. Since Bulgaria is entirely dependent on Russia for its nuclear fuel supply, therefore, it is outrightly against the notion of imposing sanctions on Moscow's nuclear sector. Although at the outset of Russia's military operation in Ukraine, Bulgaria tried to wean itself off the Russian nuclear fuel supply, it is still dependent on it till 2025. In December, Bulgaria's lone nuclear power plant signed a nuclear fuel agreement with a French company. Similarly, Bulgaria also inked a deal with a subsidiary of French energy company EDF, Framatome, which will start providing nuclear fuel to Kozlody's Unit 5 reactor in early 2025 under a 10-year agreement announced on Friday. This explains the reason why Radev is against the idea of putting sanctions on Moscow's nuclear energy industry. He knows that just like any other blunderous decision, this measure too will backfire on the EU in general and Bulgaria in particular. The Balkan nation has earlier witnessed the devastating economic consequences of backing Ukraine. Therefore, it cannot afford to take any more risks. But what made Radev deviate from Bulgaria's previous policy on the Ukraine war? What are the reasons for Sofia's changed stance on Russia, which seems more in its favor? Apparently, the political and social climate in Bulgaria is in favor of Moscow. Yes, that's correct. Irrespective of the government's fluctuant stance on Ukraine, Bulgarians have always opposed the unfair treatment of Russia.
DDoS Attack. DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Services. It is a malicious attempt to disrupt the normal traffic of a targeted server, service, or network by overwhelming the target or its surrounding infrastructure with a flood of internet traffic. TFIGlobal app, which has been pivotal in bypassing the YT police and reach every nook and corner of the world, was subjected to 5 days of DDoS attacks. We had to take the app offline, add some more layers of security, and then relaunch it. Who did it? I don't know. Chinese hackers? Maybe. We are too small to be considered big by CIA and various European intelligence agencies. But who knows? The fact is that we braved the attack and we are back. So if you have the app installed, please update it. If you don't have the app installed, please install it. The link can be found in the description. Remember, Google Play has already banned us, calling us a hate app. So Android users will need to download the APK file from our web link. Remember, they can't stop us till the time we have you on our side. Namaste.
In fact, in July last year, Bulgaria announced the expulsion of 70 Russian diplomats in July. Additionally, Sofia also mandated that ousted Russian diplomats depart the nation by Sunday midnight. Then Prime Minister Kirill Petkov, who headed the foreign ministry, announced the decision to expel. This was the largest ever expulsion of Russian diplomats that Sofia has taken in recent years. During communism, Moscow and Sofia had cordial ties, but only until the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. Due to this, both Bulgaria and the EU started putting strict sanctions on Russia. Contrary to its citizens, the Bulgarian government has historically been pro-Western. Bulgarians are pro-Russian and will never support a conflict with Russia. What infuriated Russia was that Bulgaria supported that EU sanction against Russia and referred to Moscow's special military operation as a war. The expulsion of the Russian diplomats from Bulgaria has resulted in protest by the Bulgarian population, which never wants a war with Russia. A huge protest titled "Bulgaria Does Not Want a War Against Russia" took place in front of the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral in Sofia. The demonstration was carried out by the Russophiles for the revival of the fatherland. Protesters argued that the actions of the Bulgarian government are malicious and would harm the Bulgarian people, its economy, and tourism. Also, Bulgaria has been a popular tourist destination for Russians for a very long time. A pro-Russia movement has emerged in Bulgaria as a result of the government's efforts to lessen Moscow's diplomatic presence there. This was a tight slap in the face of Bulgaria's government. The people of the country sent a strong and clear message that any partnership with Ukraine will lead to a huge economic, diplomatic, and political catastrophe. However, the Bulgarian government disregarded the whims and wishes of its people in August last year when it tried to reduce its dependence on Russian gas. The government reached an agreement with Azerbaijan to fulfill 1/3 of its needs. However, the remaining supply was based on ad hoc or short-term contracts. With the help of the European Commission, Kirill Petkov's administration organized the supply of 7 cargo ships transporting liquefied gas from Washington in June during his final days in office, but only 50% of the missed supply was being replaced with US gas imports. However, as Petkov was quickly overthrown, his interim administration realized that public opinion was against the US and in favor of Russia. Therefore, the Petkov government decided to accept only one of the agreed 7 liquefied gas supplies from the US company, Cheniere, despite the price being nearly €30 less than the offered on European gas exchanges in order to maintain its popularity with the general public before early parliamentary elections are held. The liquefied gas offer was rejected, according to the interim energy minister Rosen Hristov, because it is expensive to reserve LNG slots in Turkey and Greece. But Petkov's abrupt reluctance to take energy from the US was based on its concern over falling even lower in the public's estimation. The Bulgarian government soon realized that if it bought all of its gas supplies from the US, then that could have resulted in unprecedented political and civilian turmoil given the anti-Ukrainian sentiments prevalent in the country. Sofia also realized that participating in the imposition of sanctions on Moscow was a big mistake. Therefore, it tried to undo the damage by changing its policy on the Russo-Ukraine war. Similarly, apart from the prevalence of pro-Russian sentiments among the public, even the coalition partners of the previous government of Prime Minister Kirill Petkov were in favor of a strong partnership with Russia. But the persistent endeavors of Petkov to serve his masters in Ukraine and the West resulted in the political demise of his regime. In June, 3 ministers and 12 MPs from the coalition partner ITP, including the diplomatic chief Theodora Genshovska, withdrew from the cabinet, costing Prime Minister Kirill Petkov his majority. Petkov's administration fell apart due to ITP's exit, one of the 4 coalition parties. There were already disagreements between Petkov and ITP, as well as other coalition allies, on how to assist Ukraine. Kirill Petkov sought to give Ukraine military aid and assistance, but the coalition allies opposed it. In fact, another coalition member of Petkov's regime, the Bulgarian Socialist Party, had previously threatened to quit the government coalition if Sofia were to supply Ukraine with arms. Due to his steadfast support for Ukraine and disregard for domestic problems like poverty and inflation, Kirill Petkov lost the majority in the National Assembly. This political development reaffirmed the fact that the majority of the people in Bulgaria support the establishment of a strong relationship with Moscow and are against the notion of any partnership with Ukraine. If a coalition government can get collapsed and people are compelled to take to the streets in a demonstration of dissent, then that is more than enough to prove that the political and social environment of a country, in this case Bulgaria, is in support of Russia and not Ukraine. Bulgarians are also angry with Ukraine because the refugees from the country were earlier costing huge taxpayers' funds. The cost of housing a refugee is 600 euros per month. In Bulgaria, the minimum wage is 360 euros and the typical pension is 300 euros. This prompted the pro-Russian nationalist Verestein party supporters to launch a potent social media campaign as a result. Therefore, Russia now has one more voice of support in the EU, which recognizes that further arming Ukraine is not in the best interest of the international order.